Hey everybody, it's Eric, and welcome to my podcast show, YouTube channel, whatever it is. And today I'm joined with Amanda, who is joining us from Bali. And I came across Amanda's work, I don't know, through some Facebook groups, or I don't know, can't even remember where, but I've been a fan for a few months now. And she posts a lot of these hypnotic sort of videos, which bring to truth a lot of the things that I feel a lot of people need to know about sexuality, about men and women, and ideas that seem rooted in stuff that's related to tantra and all of these sorts of things that I believe that as we evolve as a human race, understanding our gender, our sexuality, and all that stuff is very important. And Amanda's videos have really been a great source of inspiration in this area for me. So I've invited her here today to talk about these topics. And I'm specifically interested in, masculine, owning the masculine and how women also mirror that and re-owning the feminine. So let's hear about that. Now, Amanda, thank you for joining us. Can you just sum up your work? I said it in my words, and you tell me what you do, and so people know from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for having me here, Eric. So a lot of my work really has to do with understanding masculine and feminine dynamics and how that shows up within ourselves, whether regardless of what gender you're in, and how it's in relation to the world, and also how it's in relation to people that we're connecting with, whether it's in our work or whether it's in our sexual, intimate, or relationships, romantic relationships. I specifically focus a lot more on the sexuality, sacred sexuality, understanding polarity within intimacy, and understanding conscious communication and how to create the lifestyle and the relationships that we truly desire through understanding our masculine and feminine. And I think this is something that a lot of people are confused by. And my background is I am a very spiritual person. I'm a holistic nutritionist and was a yoga teacher and traveled around the world for many, many years. And I always felt really deeply resonant with the yogic path and the Eastern philosophy. We were chatting just before we got on here about how travel has completely changed our lives and brought us into the people that we are today. And I always really deeply resonated with spirituality of other cultures, more ancient cultures, more so than the West. And there was one piece that I always felt was missing. That wasn't until I found Tantra, which was this sexuality, the primal, the animal, the relational aspect, which is, well, let's just be honest, why we're all here. So this is what I hope to shine light on in my work, is to normalize sexuality, to bring sacredness back into it, and to also help people have deeper, more connected, more profound relationships.
That's amazing. And so let's talk about where most people are coming from in when they come to you. I mean, I guess growing up in North America, we're exposed to this hyper success-oriented culture where people are hyper individualistic, not collectivistic very much at all, and they're sort of driven towards the success. It's very superficial, and these values, I mean, we see over the last little while these more green ideas, these more sort of like collectivistic sensitivity coming out in the North American society, but a lot of people are still in the quote unquote rat race, where they're trying to get, success and status symbols and the ideal life that's been projected by marketing and the media and all that stuff. So can you talk a bit about your where you were coming from, like your sort of escape from that rat race? And I've heard you mention it a couple of times in your video, your escape from that sort of like superficial intellectually not thought oriented, not feeling oriented society, and how you got into the more sensitive and embodied feminine energy that you have now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in California and went back to California, grew up in Colorado, went back to California as soon as I could because I'd always felt like, I was born in California. I'm supposed to be a California girl. Why the fuck am I in Colorado? And I went back to chase those dreams and to go down that path. I graduated high school early to go to college. I was gonna, if I followed the path, I was gonna be graduated by the time I was 21. And went to school for fashion, and then I changed my major multiple times. And I really started to realize that I was chasing this dream that was somebody else's. I was chasing this dream that was my parents, that was society's, that was my culture. but it wasn't actually mine. And it was through, I always said, like, I'm going the road less traveled by. It's through me going to California and starting to do personal development work and finding meditations and stumbling upon the Merkaba and yoga and Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle and, Don Miguel Ruiz and all of, like, I had a really mystical experience. Joe Dispenza, this was when What the Bleep Do We Know came out, like, I really started to open up, and my understanding of what was possible in life started to blossom at a very young age. My brother introduced me into the Merkaba meditation, which is like an ancient Egyptian style of sacred geometry meditation, when I was 17. And so it was from that moment I started to awaken, if you will. And then all these teachers came through, Osho came through as I was this portal. And I remember when I was 19, I had gone through a really kind of dark night of the soul, dark month. And I lost my job, and I had just moved into a brand new place, and I was smoking pot, and I gained a bunch of weight. And I realized, I said, okay, something's got to shift. Like, my life is falling apart. My car got broken into, I was supposed to go back to college. All of these things are happening. There's a reason why this is happening. I need to go within myself. And I was living in the ghetto in San Diego, near San Diego State. And I couldn't go outside. I had no money. I was confused. I was depressed. I was alone. And I said, okay, there's nowhere else to go but within. And it was in those moments that I really deepened into my meditation practices. This is where I rediscovered yoga. And this is where my journey really started to take off. And I started to open up and kind of break out of the mold of what we were taught by society. Now, of course, there was still a part of me that was like, okay, I kind of want to be safe. I want to keep going to college. And there's another path that I know that I will take as well. And so I did what I needed to do in order to get through the basic, first couple years of college. And then as soon as I could, when I turned 21, I went to India. I was called to India, and that began my journey that never really stopped about 7 years ago.
Wow. So yeah, India. And what's the culture shock like and how long did you spend there? What was the circumstance? What were the culture shocks, and what did you feel opening up inside yourself from that culture?
Yeah, great question. So for me, it's actually really interesting. I've lived many lives in India, and I never knew what that meant. Like, if you would have said that to me before, I would have been like, okay, she's sippy. But the reason why I know that is because I literally landed in Delhi, and this was the first time I'd ever traveled alone by myself. And I felt this overwhelming sense of, I'm home. Like, this is home to me. And, India is one of the most crazy and chaotic places. Like, it is messy, it is loud, it is sensory overload, from noises to smells to people to things to, oh my gosh, it's like one of the most crazy and chaotic. And it has been my greatest teacher of the feminine. They call her Mama India for a reason, because you go in, I go in, I'll speak for myself, with my masculine, very structured. I was a perfectionist. I was very much in my masculine. And I go in thinking things are going to be my way. This is, we Americans, especially, North Americans, we think, or the youngest, we think look how big we are. Look how much we've done. We made this. We created this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You get to India with that attitude, you're going to get slapped around real hard. And so I spent cumulatively, I went back and forth. I have many teachers in different philosophies and areas of life. And I spent about 3 years in and out of India, living in different parts, from the north to the south. And, Mama India has been my greatest teacher of teaching me how to connect to the feminine. And yeah, I give thanks to her often for her blessings.
So you mentioned something about that sort of masculine aspect of the way that North American society raises women to be sort of goal oriented and like this and that, and the sort of like sense of entitlement to certain levels of experience, and like, and when you go to a place like India, it completely breaks all of that down. What does that look like? I mean, because obviously you were always in touch with your feminine on the inside, but you had all these habits which were like, okay, this is got to be like this, and that's going to be like this, and I have to do this, have to do that. Were there moments of sort of like struggle in breaking all that down and letting go of all that, or was it just I mean, it must have been precarious at one point, like the culture shock, because I when I moved to Serbia, like 13 years ago for the first time, I felt all these layers of just like stuff coming off of me, and like it was finding myself. So tell me, when you were like letting go of all of that and embracing the feminine part of yourself and letting India transform you with its culture and the experiences there, how did that feel? And what were the moments of struggle? And how did you get through that? Because a lot of people would travel there, be shocked, and then go home and never go through to the other side, right?
Yeah, it's so funny. I always say, like, India, you will you'll go and she'll grab a hold of you and she'll hold you so tight and you're never going to want to let go. Or she'll chew you up and spit you out and you'll go running away and never want to come back. It's like, it's a love, like, you either love it or you hate it. And I really find that to be so true with so many people that I've talked about or talked to who have gone to adventured to her lands. The first 6 months I was there, I bought a one-way ticket, and it was just bliss. It was magic. I literally don't think I had one contraction of a time. I went back on a mission to finish college as a nutritionist and to also bring my teachings and the wisdom and the embodiment and the understanding. I also was in Nepal for quite some time. So the understanding of slowing down, being with the feminine, not being so tied to my to-do list and my calendar. And I really wanted to bring this transmission back to the West. And it was I think it was the third time, maybe even the fourth time. Every time I went back for more medicine and every time I gathered something more deeply. But I think it was either the third or the fourth time that I went back where she really slammed me. I was a pretty successful yoga teacher at the time. I was living in San Francisco. I was throwing conscious parties. I was doing a really amazing job and really good work in the world. And I was very attached to that identity, my identity of a yoga teacher and what that meant. And I actually got really sick. So I had a burnout. There's bugs around here. Sorry about that. I had a burnout, and it wasn't your normal burnout. So a lot of people think, burnout is like you start becoming really fatigued, you're stressed, you have lots of anxiety. There's all of these like physical complications that literally prevent you from being able to work. You're depressed, you're stressed, you're overworked, you're overwhelmed, everything, it hits your nervous system. This was very different. I went to India and I was on fire. I was doing lots of podcasts, lots of interviews. I was really big in the Me Too movement, standing for the masculine, standing for the men in that movement. And then I ended up getting multiple things. I ended up getting mold poisoning, which was quite severe. Then I got a parasite. Then I had this crazy womb like initiation where I was bleeding and having incredible, almost like miscarriage type experiences for over 6 weeks. And it was in those moments where I literally remembered being on my back. I was just go, go, go. And I was so addicted to the praise from my friends and my peers who were like, Amanda, like, you're getting it. I see you. I've been watching your videos. I've been seeing you. Your transmission is powerful. And I was so addicted to that. And then I was on my back for 2 weeks and I literally could not move. And I remember laying in my apartment and just watching the palm trees. There was these huge palm trees, and I would watch the palm trees for hours and hours and hours, just swaying back and forth. And it was in that moment where, my deeper level of the initiation of the feminine came through, where it's not just about ceremonies and rituals and embodying, the different aspects of the goddess, which there are many. It's really about fucking slowing down, being in the chaos, allowing yourself to surrender, being in the nothingness and finding your wholeness from that space. And so that was really when I received even deeper codes of what it means to let go. And the feminine is chaotic, she is the mystery in and of it all. So yeah.
Yeah, actually, I have a phrase in one of the new songs I'm working on. It's called Embrace the Void. And the chorus goes, embrace the void, don't chase the noise. And I feel like I had an experience about 3 years ago in Thailand where, I'm working online, you go where you want, you do what you want, but you're kind of tethered to the business that you've set up on the internet. And so it was like I had, at the time, this client was about 60% of my business, and I had a huge argument with them. And I had a little breakdown and turned into a skin infection and all that sort of stuff, and turned into about a month of me, pretty much being in bed because the skin infection meant that it was hard to move, and it was really bad. Turns out I couldn't own myself out of it, and I did have to take antibiotics, and it took me a while to realize that. But the whole experience was like, okay, so if I lie in bed for a month, the whole world doesn't actually like crumble, you know? And so
Yeah.
yeah, I had a very
I'm
similar
not as important as I think I
yeah,
am.
or it doesn't always have to be going out of yourself and just, you know, it doesn't always have to be to go get it. It doesn't always have to be show the world how disciplined you are. It doesn't always have to be um, go and make bend life in your way. It sometimes it always needs to be like there's always like a moment where you have
Love.
to dial back and just like be with yourself and not depend on
Yeah.
other people. But I mean, there's also a lot of us who have gotten too used to being self-sufficient and too used to withdrawing from the whole you know, I've got this typical lone wolf. I'm an only child with my both my parents were only children, and so my default is like I need to be alone. Just fuck off world, and I can go out in the world and achieve like lots of things. Yeah, it's cool, but at the same time, I feel I'm very guarded around other people, and so part of my thing is like, well, I still am this lone wolf. I am a leader of people. I do have that sort of dominant personality, but just to re-embrace the collective and the idea of living with other people and forming bonds with them is almost a little foreign to me. And it does actually interfere with my relationships with women, with men, with everybody. It's like, and so when you find, because I was raised in the society which is hyper individualistic, where family values, you know, were seriously on the decline, and just sort of like, you know, now I'm in a place where actually, yeah, okay, I'm successful, 38 years old, here I am. All right, what's the next thing that I want? It's connection. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you get, I guess people like me is what I'm asking, but let's just say, how do you get men to be more open, like successful people who are successful being individualistic? How do you get them to embrace more connection with other people in your work?
Eric, this is a great question, and I really appreciate that you brought this up. A lot of the people who find me and who I work with, men and women, they have this very strong masculine, independent lone wolf type, and that's also what I have deconditioned myself out of and still get to, because this is a practice, especially for those of us in the American, North American continent. I see that even more so than Europeans, actually. So the first thing that I would do is understanding, anxious and avoidant attachment styles. Yeah. So helping people understand, like, most people who are, let's say, more individualistic rear more on the avoidant style of attachment styles. So the first thing is just becoming aware of where you're at and what your trauma is and what your greatest fears are. Like, what are your greatest fears? Oftentimes for the people who are the lone wolfers, they are afraid that it's actually going to, like, a relationship is, and in a relationship, they're going to lose themselves. They're going to lose their sense of connection to themselves and their sense of identity. And so, really, the first piece is just really getting comfortable with your fears and really allowing yourself to understand that those fears are okay to be there. And that also the way that we move through those fears and we keep disconnecting ourselves is through actually um, dropping deeper. Hold on one second. YN, YN, no noise. Sorry about that,
It was
Bali.
actually kind of soothing, the noise, but yeah, okay.
Was it? Okay, it
Yeah.
was distracting to me because I'm like, I'm on my Apple headphones here. They're gonna pick up all the
It
noise.
was
So
almost like a hypnotic sort of like thing that was
okay.
merging with your words. Anyways,
Okay,
let's go back into that
okay.
state.
Yeah. So yeah, the first thing is just understanding what your wounds are and what your fears are and identifying them. A lot of the work that I do with both men and women is understanding the inner child work. So we all have wounds, no matter how amazing your parents were, or how terrible they were. We all have childhood wounds. There's a part of our inner child that wasn't held, seen, loved, nourished, appreciated, connected to enough. And it is not your partner's responsibility to do that. It is your responsibility. And so the biggest inner work that I believe in creating deeper tribe like bonds and community is really understanding we have an inner dude, an inner man, and an inner woman, and they are the parents to our inner child. And so relationships are some of the deepest transformational personal growth work I think there is available out there. And it's also some of the most uncomfortable, because when you're in deep relationship spaces, you're going to see aspects of yourself that you would rather not see, and you would rather project it on everything and everyone else. But when you are in that deep relationship, this is your opportunity to dive deeper into yourself and understanding this parenting, reparenting your inner child and loving and supporting all parts of you. So there's lots of things that we could do as far as practices, but this is at least conceptually an understanding of, if I'm a lone wolf, what are my pains, what are my fears, what are my desires, and what are my childhood wounds? And a way that you can also find that is through your past relationships. So what are the patterns that I have created in my past relationships? Because the pattern is coming from you. You keep calling people, experiences, challenges into your life so that you can heal these wounds, or you keep repeating the patterns and the story repeats itself.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I always had this feeling like my own innate intelligence and individuality was not valued in the system that I grew up, even though I had a family that really valued that and all that stuff. But it just a sort of unease about anything that's kind of like common, the group, what's cool right now. And it's like I always had this drive to be individual. So it is like, yeah, that whole thing that they talk about, like authenticity. And somewhere in like I was watching an interview with Tim Ferriss and Gabor Mate a couple days ago, and Gabor was talking about, for those who don't know, he's a really great person, doctor who does work around trauma and addiction and stuff like that. And he was talking about, yeah, how there's like this whole idea of like, to be a human being and survive as a baby, you need to have attachment and connection to the other human beings. And then there's this whole feeling where you want to be yourself and want to be authentic, but yeah, through civilization and parenting, there will always be a moment where that's sort of like suppressed. It's like, baby, don't cry right now, sort of thing, where in public you're annoying the people around you, sort of thing. And that leads to this wounding where it's like so unconscious. And it's like our authenticity. Yeah. So a lot of us lone wolves, we have this sort of complex or wounding or whatever it is, which also can be bring very beautiful things to the world. But it's like that we're not accepted in society as we are. Either we have to get out or we have to, sacrifice our authenticity. So I'm very much of that type and I realize it. And so it shows up in my relationships, it shows up in my business, which is very successful. And it's based on this idea of like, I didn't want to live in Canada anymore. I didn't feel at home there. So I moved to Europe and started this business, which was based on remote working and IT support and all this stuff. And it's like, your wound can be the source of so much beauty in your life, but at the same
Yeah.
time, you need to see what it is and see how it's holding you back at the same thing. So, I mean, what does it mean in terms of like getting back to masculinity and femininity? If you're a man who feels like your authenticity has been, suppressed by how you were raised, by your family, father or mother, let's say, how do you own that masculinity and actually listen to your heart and bring that to the world? What are the variables here to discover how your wound will drive you to greatness, but how to actually make sure that the greatness that you're striving for is your authentic self, and that the stuff you're giving to other people and the way that you're leading is actually coming from the light and not the shadow?
That is a beautiful question. And what I first want to do is just breathe into that. I invite anybody who's listening also just to breathe into that question. So yeah, just to repeat the question, how do we, let's say, as a masculine being, how do men make sure that their gift is coming through from their light and not the shadow? Which I think that this is the nature of the dualistic experience. Chances are it's both. Yeah, chances are it is actually both. And what we get to do is we get to start to become more conscious as a leader, like you are. You're having these conscious conversations. You look at your wounds. This is where a king, so if we work in the archetypes, right? The king, just because he's a king and he's the leader of his country or his space, his kingdom, doesn't mean he doesn't have shadows. No, no, no. Just as a gods, if you ever listen to mythos and really understand mythology, no matter where it's from, they have shadows just as much as we do. It's part of what makes us in this reality. The important thing is really learning to feel. So this is where you bring in healthy femininity. So what is the feminine? The feminine helps you feel things. Where is the void? Where is the lack in your life? What do you desire? What is missing? Can you feel? Can you drop out of your mind and all the productivity and the go and the do? And can you really become, and this is the thing with success driven people, We put our pride and our sense of self and our identity wrapped up in what we do rather than how we feel. And oftentimes, many people who are very successful, they end up feeling empty. They have all the things and they're like, okay, I have all the things, but actually, inside my body and inside my relationships, I'm feeling alone. I'm feeling disconnected. Like, how did I achieve all the things? And I feel so disconnected. And so this is where we start to bring in our feminine and healthy femininity. Like, oof, okay, now that I'm no longer trying to get there and trying to reach success because I've had it, now I've created spaciousness and I actually get to feel. And I get to feel the pieces of me that are in pain, that are sad, that are lonely, that are depressed, that are confused. And this is where the inner parenting comes in. So now that I allow my feminine space to feel, you don't get stuck in the story and you don't continue to repeat the pattern in the wound. That wouldn't serve you and it wouldn't serve anyone else. But what you get to do is you get to say, oh, okay, so if I look deeper, now that my feminine is feeling, okay, so now I can drop into my inner child. So like, where is all of this coming from? What part of me needs to be seen, needs to be held, needs to be witnessed, needs to be loved? And so by doing this work of diving deeper, deeper inquiry, we start to realize the root and the source. When we start to realize the root and the source, oftentimes there's that what brings awareness to the shadow of like, oh, I've been so fucking successful because I was deeply afraid when my, parents went bankrupt that would be me and that I would be on the streets. And I never wanted that my children to have to, go through what I went through. So you're coming from a wounded place, and it could be whatever the story is. And from that space, you get to hold compassion for yourself and you get to actually feel the parts of you that you're too busy not feeling in order to create the thing, the masterpiece, the business, the company. And from that space, you get to create relationships because relationships need you to feel. You can only feel someone else as deep as you can feel yourself. This is the challenge with masculine and feminine dynamics in relationship. If a man is not integrated in his feminine, which is a big part of my work, is helping men understand and drop into their feeling and their emotional body, which is very much repressed in our society, no matter where you are. As a man, big boys don't cry. You need to toughen up. You need to be a big boy. You need to get your shit together. All of these idioms that we have make subconscious imprints. And so feeling our feminine, specifically as men, is something that is not ever given space for oftentimes, or ever permission for, or nor is it actually appreciated. However, when you're relating with other people, doesn't matter if it's another man or if it's a woman or if it's your mother or if it's your grandma, we relate through the feminine because connection is about feeling. You can be here and we can be having a conversation. We can be all here. We can walk away feeling very disconnected. How did I feel more disconnected? I just had an hour-long conversation with this guy because he wasn't dropped into his physical, emotional, energetic, and feeling body. We want to feel, and that's what brings us closer together. So integrating your feminine and integrating your inner child and really sitting with yourself and feeling, where am I in shadow here? Doing the deeper work is what's going to pull you out of that rigid masculinity or potentially shadow masculinity that we see oftentimes in business.
Yeah, and to be yeah, I notice as a musician, I do rely heavily on this feminine side of myself to write songs, to get this beautiful thing. But there's like a gate there, actually, where like it's I'm pushing on the masculine, da, 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 and then the creative side of me is something that's sort of flying around, being whipped around a bit by the purpose-driven mental stuff, and integrating the two when it happens is very beautiful. But a lot of men are quite skeptical of the feminine. Um, let's say, and I wanted to touch on relationship with mother figure and all that sort of stuff, and what I mean. There's something, everybody sort of is familiar with the idea that women somehow don't feel safe around men as much as they do around other women. But it's also less understood that a lot of men feel the same way. Like they feel more safe around other men than they feel around women, because there is this perception, there is this sort of relationship that they had with their mother of some sort of disconnection, or some sort of, like, at one point the mother's love, which is inherently infinite, there was put like a finite cap where the mother like withdrew that love and sort of like would and that can be a huge source of wounding. So can you touch men in their mother complexes and their need for connection to the feminine and the way that they sort of pull back from that. And can you touch on that and how that can hold them back from embracing their own inner feminine as well and relating with
Yes.
women? Yeah.
Yeah, so our first, like the deepest bond that we have for is the bond with the opposite sex. It's like it's also our first, like where our first sexual attraction starts to be embedded. It's a different type of chemistry, male body beings and female body beings. And of course we're moving more into transgender and gender neutrality. And this is a whole nother journey that we're going on as an evolution of our species. But in general, like the parent, which is the opposite, holds more of the opposite polarity to you, is where your first attraction and your deepest connection begins. And oftentimes we create this through, as you mentioned, there it seems like it should be infinite, but yet it is actually finite. We create this disconnection, and we begin to create our own patterns and our own habits around how present was your mother. It's like it all depends. Like your nervous system, especially up until about 2 years old, is deeply dependent on your mother. So if she's very present and very loving and very giving and looks at you in the eyes when she's breastfeeding with you and really gives you all of her, your nervous system in relationship to the feminine inside yourself and inside other people is going to be very different to a woman who, let's say, actually didn't want to be pregnant and she was way too young, and she was very stressed out, or she was sick, or she was whatever the story is. And so we are imprinted from our parents' state of being and also from their wounds as well. And so it's interesting what I've noticed, and this is just what I've noticed in my work, is both women and men, we actually there's fit, I would say, I don't know the percentage, but I say the men who find me and my work actually feel safer around women than they do around men, because they have lots of trauma from their brotherhood, from their father, from boys in school, etc. And then there's the other category of men who feel much safer with a bunch of men than they do with women, which typically comes from the mother wound. And so the people who are attracted to, let's say, our men's program called the initiation, they're going to feel much safer with a woman. So the motherhood wound will still be there because we all have some sort of wounding. And I don't even actually really like to call it that, because then it imprints, it's like, oh, I'm wounded, now I'm going to attach to this story, and this is my story, and this is what makes me me, when we can always decondition these wounds. But we first have to become aware of them. So for men who are skeptical of the feminine, the first thing that you can do is begin to see who you can open up to and trust as a woman. It might not be your romantic partnership. Maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a healer, maybe it's a tantric dakini. So how can you start to, maybe it's a best friend, maybe it's a sister. There's so many different ways. And like, where is your wounding? Is if your deepest wound is with your brothers, then a lot of the men who find myself and Sophie's work, they come into the initiation and they have a lot of wounds around men. They don't trust men. They don't feel like it's safe to be vulnerable around men, but they trust us. And so we hold the polarity in our containers of, you trust us, we're holding kind of the mother archetype, and also the brother. We shift around roles, the teacher, the mentor, and because you trust us, your nervous system becomes safe, and you can begin to see that the brotherhood is safe and that you are safe. And this is where the rewiring and the repatterning starts to change, and many of the men who come to see us and work with us. So there's many avenues that one can take.
That's interesting.
That's
Yeah. And I recall hearing something in one of your live streams, I believe it was, where there was also a little bit of a challenge around men sort of like showing interest in the program and then sort of disappearing.
Yep.
And when I heard that, what came up for me was like, it seemed like they were looking for connection. Like, yeah, it could be that in starting to explore, as they become aware that if you are a man and you have trouble relating with other men, then maybe going to talk to a woman about it is not going to solve that, because it just sounds like a classic sort of like daddy's mean to me, I'm going to go talk to mummy sort of like childhood reaction. And it was interesting to me to hear you guys describe that challenge. And I mean, what I really want to do in a lot of my work is actually be the guy who would be balanced enough, have principles enough to give men that sort of insight into their own personal development and psychology so they can rise above that sort of thing. Because it's like, yeah, lots of men are irrational, especially in business. You know, business is a very like individualist, me first sort of space where everybody's in it for themselves in a lot of cases. In the current society, in the capitalist world, where everybody's told that they have to make as much money as possible, that sort of selfish behavior and degradation of principles sort of comes up. But I feel that once, you know, this is, as an entrepreneur who, I would say I'm past the scarcity stage of where I'm at, and I don't worry about money anymore. I worry about how to actually bring up the people around me and make their lives better from encoding values into my business by making decisions that might not turn out well financially, might not be profit oriented, but are like long-term stability oriented, so that people can find themselves stable and therefore less motivated by scarcity. I feel us as human beings, like once we get past this scarcity, a lot of stuff open up, a lot of possibility. Once you have enough money and you know you're going to have enough money to live for a long time, then you turn inwards, then you get past all these things and examine the psychology. Whereas before, a lot of us were sort of like just running around trying to make
In
ends meet by
survival.
whatever that meant, whatever you had to do to get that job, get that gig, the paycheck, whatever it is. And so we're at a very interesting time of human development where a lot of us can get past that and go into spaces like your work, where you can actually take the time to explore that stuff and become a better person. But how would you how would you extend your work to somebody who's still sort of like having to be in a bunch of situations that they don't really like just to survive? What would you tell them, like if they're working a job they hate, let's say in the rat race, and you know they're making
Yeah.
just enough to survive, maybe a little bit in debt, I don't know, how would you what are the little things that they can do to get to know themselves despite the fact that their life is a grind?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the first thing is meditate. You know, and meditation is free. There's a ton of resources. Everybody should be meditating at least 20 minutes a day. You can do that no matter where you're at. Yeah, that's the first thing. Second thing is journaling. Highly, highly recommend journaling. I mean, I tell all my clients as soon as they start with me, get a journal. It's going to be your best friend, your resource, your therapist. It's going to tell you more about yourself than I or anyone else ever could. So get a journal and start really documenting where you're at and what's up for you and what's alive for you. It's kind of like a purge, a brain dump where it's no longer staying in here with the anxiety, but it's really starting to move into the paper and into helping you see yourself outside yourself so that you can reflect and become aware of the Maya or the illusion and all the things that are keeping you stuck, such as your patterns, your habits, your subconscious beliefs, etc. That's really how you can start to do subconscious reprogramming, is by becoming aware what and then read it. So fill out a journal and then go back and read it and notice your language. Notice the things you're saying. Notice the I can'ts, the limiting beliefs, the stories that are keeping you stuck in the past rather than moving on in the future. I'd also recommend Joe Dispenza. Start listening to Joe Dispenza. He's huge in the movement of helping people really begin to create their reality. And then from that space, also clean up your diet. What are you putting into your body? What you're putting into your
Yes.
body is making up your cells and is changing your ability to change your brain and change your whole entire reality. Literally, you have new cells every 7 years. So become conscious of how you're moving your body. Are you doing movement practices? There's so many free resources. There is no reason. We live in the technology age where there's infinite amount of resources. So I don't really buy people's money stories anymore. It's really about, are you showing up for yourself? Sure, it might be a very real reality that you're stuck in the rat race, but the only reason why you're there is because you're not choosing to invest your time more wisely and accessing the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of free tools that everyone like yourself and me and many, 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 many other people around the world are putting out to support you. So look at how you're spending your time, because your time is the greatest investment that you could ever make. And from that, when you start actually understanding that principle and that philosophy, then you will start to see that there's more abundance in your bank account. Stop eating shitty food, stop eating out when you don't need to, stop drinking, stop smoking, stop doing all the things that are creating a deficit, and really start to become conscious with your time, with your energy, with your money. And then eventually you will have money saved aside. Create a savings account. Every check you get, put 10% or 5%. If you can't put 10, put 5% away. And then eventually you'll have enough money to buy an online course or go to a workshop or do something. And then the last thing is invest. you are the best investment you'll ever make. I remember like one of the biggest coaching investments I ever made. I was doing little things, trying to understand the entrepreneur journey and the self-development, and books. Obviously, go to the library. That was my beginning when I was broke and didn't have any money. But then eventually it comes to a point where it's like, okay, everything is mindset. Yeah. So if I believe in myself, and I believe, and I did 100%, I still do believe in myself fully, then I would be the best investment I could possibly ever make. So if I believe in myself, and I believe that no matter what I put into myself, I'm going to 10x it, then I will choose to invest money that I literally don't have. I will get a credit card. If you're in the North American system, you're lucky, you're blessed. Get a credit card and make that fucking financial commitment. Then your ass is, on the fire, and you really have to start showing up, because it's not about do you know what you should do. It's about having someone or a group of someone's keep you accountable to showing up to that next level version of yourself. That's where most of the people struggle, I believe.
Awesome. So yeah, and then yeah, if you implement a plan of personal development, then you'll see how that relates to the world, and providing value to the world. That will come back to you financially, and then you can get out of the scarcity and get more into
Yep.
centering on yourself and your own passion, and figuring out who you are on this world and what you can contribute. That's great. So I wanted to cover one more topic on this sort of chat that we're having here, and that's about how men can actually help women heal from the trauma. If I can look through the lens of spiral dynamics, women have had a rough ride in history. Um, for example, you hear a lot of talk about the patriarchy. What does that actually mean? It means that for most of the last 2,000 years, we as humans were bound in a traditional society with very set gender roles where women were essentially treated like pieces of property. I don't mean to say that there was not beauty at this spiral dynamics blue stage. I live in a society in Serbia where it's very much traditional gender roles and stuff like that. And it's very satisfying for men to be men and women to be women as the society sort of aids them to be. And that's really good. But women were not allowed to express their full being in that stage when they're bound by morality of a religion and stuff like that. And then after that, you have the orange stage, which is what we're growing up in North America with, which is like sort of like the hyper individualist, where women are told that they have all the same rights of men and that they should go chase after a career like as men and doing the same things as men do. And that is also a denial of the feminine in a certain way, like to be told that you go girl, go be a lawyer and scream at people for 8 hours a day, or try to pulverize people in a lawsuit and stuff like that. That's also a denial of the feminine. And then you reach this sort of stage green, which Western society is transitioning into now, and it's sort of like there's a lot of wounding that you're getting up. I didn't even mention stage red, which is like the criminal sort of Viking going around raping everybody's stage, which is before, and that war trauma that a lot of people have from, I don't know, you could call it past lives or whatever. But then you get to this green stage, and it's very much like, okay, so I'm wounded from all of this history, from all of these experiences, from all of the transgenerational pain that has been passed down in my family, in my genetics, in my consciousness and all that stuff. And so a lot of the time, as a guy who's been practicing certain aspects of tantra for the last 18 years of my life, and being conscious on this level, I often end up in relationships with women who are dealing with a lot of this trauma, and stuff like and wanting to create certain sort of live out certain dramas that are coming up, and like my there's always this power struggle where they're trying to assert themselves, and this back and forth emotional aspect to it. And I always try to be the stable man, but at the same time say like, yeah, I'm not really interested in arguing, and I'm not really interested in having to, this comes back to my own wounding, having to sacrifice my own authenticity to tell you something you want to hear in this moment. I'm not interested in, how would you advise men? So women have lots of wounding from the previous stage of their evolution. They want to be in a relationship with you, but this stuff keeps on coming up where they're hurt, scared, afraid, either being too clingy, pushing you away, all this sort of stuff. Like the example I always bring up is like, I had two girlfriends within about 2 years of each other. One of them said that the biggest mistake I made in the relationship is I gave her too much freedom. And this is obviously a girl
Mm.
who was more in the traditional society, like patriarchy mentality, and she wanted that, and I wasn't the person to give it. And another one, she was more in the green sort of postmodern one, and she said that I was trying to put her in a cage. And this is same me, same behavior. And so, how, as a man, how do you aid women in understanding and well living out and these sorts of traumas, like so that they can evolve their consciousness, they can get back in touch with their essence through all of the cultural program? How do you decode that? How do you be there for them without alienating them while keeping the relationship, but letting them know that you don't want to just get in this rinse and repeat emotionally toxic pattern that might be somewhere encoded in her past experience?
Great question. Yeah, so the first thing is realizing that we attract the wounds, the partners who express the wounds that we are also responsible for and that we are
Absolutely.
also calling in to heal. So the first thing is realizing that is although it's easy to project everything onto her or to the other person, um, whatever you're attracting in your life, it's also your wound too. So there's equal shared responsibility, 100% your responsibility, 100% her responsibility. And this is the biggest, challenge in relationships is it's so much easier to say it's you, it's you, it's you, it's you, it's you.
And to
Now,
be alone and to just push the other person away and just like not
yeah,
live
it's
out
not
that thing
mine. You
that's
need to
coming
deal with
up.
your
Yeah,
shit. Yeah, yeah. So the best thing that the masculine gets to do is become the consciousness. And this is the masculine for anyone, doesn't matter your gender. But specifically, the masculine in the divine masculine state is the witness. He is the Shiva. He is the aspect of self that can see the drama playing out. And in the physical form, you have the ability to penetrate through. I do this often. I did it even today in a live with my girlfriend today. I said, I shifted her language instantly. You shift the language like, no, when that does happen, you will do this. Ah, yes, thank you for bringing me back to my center. When that happens, I will do this. So if there's a drama playing out, and you're caught in the drama, you're just as guilty as she is. You, as the masculine, have the ability to penetrate through. You have the ability to say, I hear you're hurt. I feel you. What do you need right now? Yeah. Okay. I need to be held. I need to be seen. I don't know what I need. Okay. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be here for you for 30 minutes. I'm going to hold you. Come. I'm going to hold you. I'm going to let you know everything's going to be okay. I'm not leaving. Everything is fine. And then I'm going to go pick up my things, go to work, do what I need to do, go for a walk. So your ability to create containers, yeah, to communicate clearly and to become the consciousness, because the feminine, especially the feminine who is also wounds, because her wounded feminine is also ping ponging and relationships are mirrors. So expressing your wounded feminine, whether or not it might be on the reverse side, but it's also your wounded feminine. So how can your consciousness become aware of the wound that's playing out, her not being seen, her not being loved, her not feeling connected to whatever it is? And how can your consciousness create a container where she can feel the things that she deeply wants to feel instead of being caught in the drama? And from that space, give her what she needs while not overstepping your own boundaries. Bring awareness to what's actually playing out so she can see herself more fully. Calm her nervous system by you doing your own emotional resiliency training through qigong and embodiment practices like yoga and breath work, and then continue to move forward in a way that's serving both of you. So that's the greatest aspect that the masculine can give is consciousness. And it's both parties. It doesn't matter who's responsibility. You can get out of a fight like that the moment someone becomes aware of what's really going on and can come from a calm space. The challenge is that our wounds hit each other, and then we're moving out of a trauma-based, a trigger-based, a nervous system-based state, and that's where a lot of the challenge comes.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Do you feel that there's almost in the conscious community that there's almost a little bit too much of a focus on being wounded and trying to resolve
Yeah,
that rather? Yeah, because
yeah.
you kind of stay there if you think I'm wounded and I need to solve this problem. I mean, a lot of
You're never
people,
gonna get out.
yeah. because I was sitting in Tulum, Mexico in January, and I was with a few other people, and everyone there's a life coach. Somehow everybody's
Yeah.
trying to get there, like whatever course online, and but I sit with these people, and this couple were talking about their wounding with their mother and stuff like that, and it's like everybody's on a healing journey here, and then one guy just said like, no, you have to stop today and you have to tell yourself I'm fully healed and move from there,
Yeah.
and then anything is just like a little game that comes up.
Yeah.
So I mean, and since then I was just thinking, no, I am fully healed. Okay, sometimes I slip into a dark shadow of my personality from a wound that's there and might be there forever, but it's all a game, and I actually am not going to walk the streets every day thinking that I'm wounded and there's something wrong with me. It's like I'm
Yeah.
whole and I've got this noise that travels around with me because it makes my life somehow more interesting, and it's like,
Yep. The
so
feminine loves drama in all of us. Doesn't matter what your gender is. Yeah.
yeah, and there's always going to be like dark moments, there's always going to be bad days, and I don't think anybody has ever like truly liberated themselves from it, but you can go a long way by just starting from the glass is half full sort of mentality, and just like I'm pretty healed, you know
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I've
I
been
love that
done
you
a
brought that up.
long way over the last 20 years of my life, like just like exploring myself and knowing who I am, and I've everything I tried to manifest pretty much came true, and it's been a beautiful journey. So yeah, it's an exciting time to be around, especially with the unlimited, as you said, the unlimited access to information, and how you can focus in on any aspect of learning and consciousness as you want just by tuning into a chat like this and listening to it. And so if people want more of you, how can they get in touch with you, your work? What are the entry points and how should they get in touch?
Yeah, so for men, if men are interested in working with me, I highly recommend they check out theinitiatedbrotherhood.com. We do lots of men work there. We're currently in a VIP exclusive container, so we're not hosting anything at the moment, but get on our newsletter and you guys can find out more about that. For women, you guys can check out my work at amandabiccum.com, Biccum. And then Instagram is where I usually hang out most. So if you just want to really get to feel me and receive lots of random transmissions and yeah, I highly recommend free stuff. Go to that, and also YouTube as well. Just search my name, Amanda Biccum. You'll be
I
able to
really
find me
like
on
your
YouTube too.
Instagram, because you've got this sort of stream of consciousness thing that I really value. I learned to do it like a while ago when I was teaching something called shamanism and psychoanalysis years ago when I was 22. And it's just like you start a sentence and then you don't know where it's going, but your unconscious sort of fills in the rest. And I feel this same sort of stream of consciousness from you. And it's like good to see
Yeah.
someone so naturally being able to embody that sort of like thing. It's almost hypnotic, and really
Mm,
the thing is, like, this is such a small space, and I really hope that this space and this type of consciousness attracts more attention in the future. I know it only will, but for now we're in a
yeah.
really small space with a small percentage of the global population even ready to hear this message, but
Yeah.
keep on putting it out there. And I feel as most people solve the basic problems of their life and scarcity, then they will go more into the discovering themselves, and the future for people like you, being messengers and bringing people together, it's very bright. And so what are you planning for your physical locations this year? Are you just going to stay in Bali, or are you going to move
You
on?
know, I've been traveling for 7 years and I actually really just want to stay here for a while. So I
Wow,
I
yeah,
look forward to being here until the end of the year. I might take a mini trip to Europe, depending on the borders and all the situation
yeah, yeah.
for a training, a tantric shamanic training. But we'll see. I mean, I would like to be here for at least till the end of the year, and then we'll see.
That's amazing. I miss Asia a lot. I'm planning
Yeah.
to hit probably Thailand. Could be Bali if Thailand won't be easy to get into in October. But yeah, I like May until October in Europe, and then yeah, moving on. So thanks a lot, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Eric. Looking forward to seeing you in the flesh sometime.
Okay, I'm gonna hit stop now. Thank you.